Good afternoon and welcome back. You're watching the Midday Report and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. We start with breaking news out of Brussels. TikTok's addictive design may be in breach of European law. The European Commission has said the social media platform's design is harmful to users and that TikTok isn't doing enough to protect them. Joining me now is our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Hello, Alex. So tell us more about this statement coming out of Brussels and how significant it is and what potential legal consequences could it carry?
Well, good afternoon, Claudia. This is enormously significant. It is the first time anywhere in the world a governing body has put out a legal framework which addresses the exact design of a social media platform. What is the European Commission saying? It is saying that TikTok's basic design, the algorithmically fueled main feed of TikTok, the For You page, is too addictive, and it is therefore posing a risk to minors, but also to all TikTok users across the board on mental health grounds. So clearly this is a very significant development because the European Commission is the first to do so at this scale. Senior Commission officials saying TikTok will have to change its design. That could involve having a lockout period at night, for example, having friction points in the use of the app, making it more difficult to effectively doom scroll for hours on end. The Commission pointing out that 7% of 12 to 15-year-old kids in the European Union spend 4 to 5 hours a day on TikTok. That is what the Commission wants to address. Now, of course, the platform has a right to defend itself. I spoke to Thomas Régnier, who's the European Commission spokesperson on this, and I said, what if TikTok doesn't comply?
TikTok says no. It's very easy. Next step would be a non-compliance decision. That would lead to a fine going up to 6% of the company's global annual turnover. If confirmed, this is a substantial breach. It's the first time we really go into the core substance of the Digital Services Act. It's the real first time where we look at the model of a company, at the addictive design of a company. This sets, of course, a benchmark for potential future cases. But yes, if we have to find TikTok, we will not hesitate to do that.
Now, I also asked Thomas Régnier if the Commission was shying away from doing the same with big American platforms, for example. He said no. X was the first platform to be fined under the Digital Services Act, and similar investigations are ongoing for Facebook and Instagram, part of Meta. There is a wave across Europe, a broader wave of countries wanting to regulate social media, particularly for under 18s. Spain considering a ban for under 16s. Poland looking at the same option. France also looking at this. Slovenia looking at this as well. Now, all of that can be regulated by individual member states, but it would be enforced by the European Commission, that building behind me, clearly cracking down now on social media platforms, which they say very simply are harmful to their users in Europe. Claudia.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was Alex Cadier reporting live from Brussels. And after Brussels, it's time for Warsaw. United States Ambassador to Poland Thomas Rose's remarks that he is cutting ties with the Speaker of the Polish Parliament Włodzimierz Czarzasty were met with backlash both in Poland and across the Atlantic. More details on what was said in the aftermath of the exchange in this next report.
Less than 2 months ago, the United States Ambassador to Poland and the Polish Parliament Speaker attended a Hanukkah celebration together. On Thursday afternoon, Thomas Rose announced he is severing ties with Włodzimierz Czarzasty. His remarks were met with backlash. Republican U.S. Congressman Don Bacon went as far as to say,
"Time for a new ambassador."
In a post on X, Rose did not clearly state what prompted the decision, but he alleged that Czarzasty's, quote, outrageous and unprovoked insults directed against U.S. President were an impediment to relations between the countries. His statement follows Czarzasty, effectively number 2 in Polish politics, saying that he will not endorse President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I will not support the nomination of Donald Trump for the Nobel Prize because he doesn't deserve it. In my view, the creation of new platforms, such as the so-called Board of Peace, is illusory. What must be strengthened are the European Union, NATO, the WHO and our own capabilities. This is where our security lies.
The Polish Prime Minister also weighed in on the ambassador's remarks.
Mr. Ambassador Rose, allies should respect, not lecture each other. At least this is how we here in Poland understand partnership.
Among those let down by Washington's representation in Europe was former commander of the U.S. Army in Europe, Ben Hodges.
Our ambassadors in Denmark and now Poland are pissing off two of our closest allies with their offish behavior. And this on the heels of dissing the soldiers of our allies who fought with us in Afghanistan and Iraq. Is this intentional, or is the administration just incompetent?
Danish veterans took to the streets in January to protest Trump's statements that U.S. NATO allies stayed a little back from the front lines during the Afghanistan war.
That's a complete lie, because we have been out in the Helmand, in the desert. So I know a lot of Danish soldiers have served there, and seen a lot of combat.
Following Donald Trump's statements about NATO allies, 44 flags were placed in front of the United States Embassy in Copenhagen to commemorate the 44 Danish soldiers killed in Afghanistan. The flags were then removed, reportedly by embassy personnel.
How did it make you feel to see the flags removed in front of the U.S. Embassy?
I feel a little offended, I think.
I think somebody was ordered to move the flags, and then they figured out it was a mistake, a big mistake, when they found out who the flags were for.
The U.S. Embassy in Denmark later put the flags back up. With respect to U.S. representation in Poland, the latest exchange went as far as the U.S. ambassador asking if Washington should take all its soldiers and equipment, when replying to a Polish student on X who asked him to go home. Rose has since deleted the post.
Senior Russian General Vladimir Alekseyev was rushed to the hospital after being shot on a street in Moscow. Russian media report, citing official sources. The Russian Investigative Committee said it opened an investigation into the shooting. Alekseyev is deputy chief of the main directorate of the General Staff at the Defense Ministry. In 2023, he was one of the top officers sent to negotiate with Wagner chief Prigozhin during the short-lived mutiny. Alekseyev has been sanctioned by the U.S. for organizing malicious cyber activities as part of Russia's attempts to interfere in 2016 U.S. presidential elections. He has also been sanctioned by Canada for his role in the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in Muscat have begun. Officials are holding the parley sitting on the proverbial powder keg as the U.S. Navy sails the Arabian Sea and the Iranian regime flexes missile muscles. Could these negotiations bring any tangible results? Here's more from the capital of Oman.
In Oman's capital of Muscat, the negotiating parties want to talk, but the difference as to the items on the agenda have rendered the diplomatic efforts strenuous.
Look, I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
But Iran said it wanted Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff to focus exclusively on the nuclear issue.
The Iranian wants an immediate relief of the sanction. The relief should be verifiable. It should be immediate. Iranians are seeking for a legal guarantee that the Americans won't withdraw from a new JCPOA.
Iran enters diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year.
It's the memory of the 12-day war, an armed conflict between Israel and Iran that unfolded in June last year. The war saw Israeli and U.S. bombing of military and nuclear facilities in Iran, the assassination of prominent military leaders, nuclear scientists and politicians, as well as the destruction of Iranian air defenses.
The diplomatic talks fail, then the region will enter into the circle of chaos, and it will be like a domino. It will start from economy, then it will spill over into the political levels, then it will spill over to the military level.
Should hostilities reignite, the U.S. has fighter jets deployed to Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan and new air defenses set up at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. On top of that, there are U.S. destroyers and combat ships at Khalifa bin Salman port in Bahrain, and a U.S. carrier strike group is navigating the entrance to the Gulf of Oman. Iran, on the other hand, has a range of drones and long-range ballistic missiles at its disposal, including the Khorramshahr 4 missile. The weapon boasts a range of 2,000 kilometers and is capable of carrying 1,500 kilogram warheads, according to Iranian state TV.
Fallout from the release of the Epstein files, 3 million emails and 1,800 pictures of some deeply disturbing materials continues, and the seismic shocks are felt in the UK. Both the government and the royal family are under fire after evidence of involvement with convicted sex offender and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein surfaced, including former Prince Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Lord Peter Mandelson. More on the backlash in John Todd's report.
Anger in the UK as King Charles is heckled over his brother Andrew's relationship with a convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And the fallout from the late sex offender's global web of relationships is now threatening British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He's under fire, including from MPs in his own Labour Party, over the decision to appoint veteran party member Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to Washington in December 2024, when his ties to the late Epstein were already known. Just how close these ties were was exposed in newly released documents that have dominated headlines in the UK. Starmer says Mandelson lied about his relationship with the late billionaire and even leaked government secrets.
He chose to disclose sensitive secrets to Epstein, almost simultaneously as receiving them. And that is what I meant when I said earlier about the deceit and the standards that I stand for in public life. Yes, at the time I appointed him, I got answers from him which I believed to be true. He painted a picture of barely knowing Epstein. I didn't know that was lies at the time.
But Starmer's regrets and apologies have done little to quell growing anger. And opposition leader Kemi Badenoch on Thursday called for a no-confidence vote.
He knew that Mandelson had a continuing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He knew Mandelson had stayed in his house while Epstein was in jail for child prostitution. The Prime Minister knew all this, and yet he appointed Peter Mandelson anyway to the most prestigious job in the diplomatic service.
Footage shows removal vans as King Charles's younger brother on Wednesday moved out after losing his mansion on the royal estate in Windsor following new damaging revelations about Andrew's links to the US sex offender. The shadow cast by Epstein, whom Starmer never met, may mean a similar fate befalls Britain's PM.
And now more on humanitarian help for Ukraine as the country struggles with power cuts in severe winter conditions. Another batch of power generators from Poland has reached its destination. This time, the delivery was orchestrated at the initiative of Krakow's Metropolitan Bishop Cardinal Ryś. The transport also involved other essential aid, such as heaters and food.
These trucks, driving from Krakow to Kiev, delivered critical aid and supplies to the citizens of Ukraine.
We delivered what's currently needed most: power generators, heaters and of course food. We've got bread, canned food, groats, pasta and just food. Although this is a rather modest load, it's so very needed in the capital of war-torn Ukraine. All our brothers and sisters living here, they need all of this. It isn't enough to answer everyone's needs, but it gives people hope that they're not alone, that someone out there is thinking about them.
Krakow's Metropolitan Bishop, Cardinal Ryś, is the man behind the plan.
All this help is coming from Krakow, from Caritas. It's thanks to Cardinal Ryś, who called for a fundraiser for Kyiv. We are so grateful for the sensitivity of the Polish Church, for their continued support.
This transport comes in times of desperate need as Russia continues its relentless attacks on Ukraine's cities and power grid.
People really are forced to sit in negative temperatures after heating plants have been bombed. Sisters from our mission told us that in the morning you wake up and there's steam coming out of your mouth, even though you're inside. People here have to endure a lot. They're really resilient. Ukrainians are resilient, especially in these conditions that they're forced to suffer through. The freezing cold, lack of hot water.
This is the second round of Caritas Krakow's initiative, supported by Cardinal Ryś. And with donations still being opened, it certainly will not be the last.
And so this would be all for now here at the Midday Report. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment.